Hello, everyone, and welcome to week 4 of Mastering Self. Today, we're heading into Foundations of the Enneagram. Really excited for this session today. And before we get started, I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of country that we're calling in from here, the Turrbal and the Yagara people, and from where Sarah and Dan are, the Arakwal people of the Bundjalung Nation. So I'd like to recognise their ongoing connection to land, waters and culture, and pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. In today's session, we're going to have a quick review of the last 7 days, hear how it's been as you've explored stages of adult development. And then from there, we're going to step into the Enneagram, looking at foundations of the Enneagram and creating awareness around personality typologies. We'll move into an introduction to self-regulation, letting go of tension. And for today, myself and Sarah will be facilitating the first half of the session, and Dan will take over towards the end. So, Dan, would you like to take it away for a bit of a drop in?
Beautiful. Thank you, Marion. And so let's take a moment collectively, zooming in, meeting in this space here. Gently closing your eyes. Just a couple minutes here. A practice no different to what you've been practicing, regardless of however many days you've done. Closing your eyes and keeping your mouth closed, tongue gently on the roof of your mouth. And fogging up that window through the nose as you take a breath in. Gently float at the top and slowly let all of that air out, fogging up that window. Floating at the bottom for a moment and back in. Floating at the top and again out. Fogging the window on the way out and on the way in. No need to force anything. No need to force your gentle hold at the bottom or the top. Just smoothly rounding out the turns at either end, and then flowing into the next breath out or breath in. For now, no need to be anywhere. No need to rush. Simply be with your breath, noticing it and riding it every step of the way. Allowing yourself to gently take a couple more breaths in and out. Then from this space, carrying it into space as you open your eyes gently when you're ready.
So, welcome everyone. So, we're just going to do a short review. How have you been since last week? How has the last 7 days been? How have you been noticed aligning knowing it with doing? And that then moves into being. What have you noticed there? We touched on stages of development. It was a bigger session. So, yeah, what have you been taking from that? What have you been observing in your day-to-day life from that session? And what have you also been noticing in your breath practice, your sitting practice? So really exploring those two elements and anything that comes up really in a breakout room. So just going to go into a 5-minute breakout room. And what have you become aware of in the last 7 days, really? What have you noticed? Situations, thoughts, feelings around stages of development, questions and reflections that came up over the last 7 days related to last week content specifically. So Lawrence, if you can put people in a group for 5 minutes, with 2 people in each group, be good.
Enjoy.
Enjoy the open space, enjoy the exploration. See you soon.
So you should be able to.
You mean that you didn't know that was a practice that you could engage in? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I knew it was a task, and I thought about it and I reflected on it, but I would think about it for a few seconds and go, oh yeah, that's that. I'm thinking about this, I'm intending to do this, and I'm doing this. Great. And that was it. So I didn't really go into it. I didn't have any realizations or learnings from it.
Yeah, so it's beautiful that you bring that up. So it's really with that, and this goes really for everyone to start noticing where it's potentially out of alignment. So where you notice yourself have setting certain goals for yourself, or certain values that are important for you, or certain beliefs that you have, and you're not actually doing what you're saying, in a sense, where the doing and the saying is out of alignment, or where you feel like you would actually like to be in a particular way, but the doing is still happening in a particular other way. So let's say you'd like to slow down a little bit more, for example, like to slow down a bit more in life, but the habituate way of being has to just be on go mode kind of thing. And that's where you can see that it's out of alignment. So the opportunities where you often will see this is where it's often not in alignment, because the moments that are in alignment, it's just happening and it feels quite flowy in that sense. So those are if you would like to have a pointer of where to look out for, that would be the moments to look out for, of like, hey, where do you notice where it's actually not fully in alignment with you? And that's where you feel some friction in yourself of, this is actually not true for me here. Does that help you?
Yeah, that does. And I can maybe think of a few examples now. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, cool. You're welcome. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else that would like to share?
I have a few examples. As I started noticing, I started writing quite a lot down, but I'll just pick a few that were more current, that kept coming up, more present, which was the continually looking for evidence to support my narrative, with my intention being coming away from the stories, coming back to present. But I noticed how much I'm looking for evidence to support the thing. And as I spent more time with that, I noticed that, for example, I'd be driving up a road and I would start saying, oh, this is why I hate these roads, this is why I hate these roads, this is why I hate these roads, going. And it was because I was waiting for another car to come, and I was going to have to reverse. And then I catch myself saying it and noticed that I was saying it because I was feeling scared or nervous that something was going to come around the corner. And then I'd come back and notice that there is no one there yet, and it's fine, and it's actually it's pleasant. And if someone does come, all I have to do is reverse. But it was so interesting how loud, this is why I hate these roads, this is why I hate these roads. And just how often that comes up, that I'm looking for things to support, and how quickly that I slip into that, those stories. But I'm grateful for that, because very much there's a pattern, which is that I must go into my story, my narrative, hold it before I can put it down. It can't sort of just come out. So this is a good part of that process. So I'm grateful for that.
If I can jump in there, Georgina, just for everyone's sake, what a beautiful example that something as simple as driving on the road, what we allow ourselves to think about a situation can have us feel fear, and it can have us feel scared or resistance. And so Georgina was experiencing fear of an empty road. Funny, right? Sounds silly, but the smallest, most innocuous of narratives that can be driven in the mind, the smallest narratives can be causing quite a large state. And then we wake up momentarily and be like, there's actually nothing going on here. I'm on my couch sitting here. I'm in the car and I'm driving. There's no cars and everything's sweet at the moment. And so, just to notice that for yourself. Thank you.
Yeah, and you also mentioned, Georgina, you mentioned that your intention is to move away from the narratives. Is that intention serving you?
Yes. It's allowing me to be more present with other people, because stories create defensiveness in me. I notice that the stories come when it feels like there's something to defend, for me, quite often.
Yeah, so who is holding that intention?
Can you repeat that?
Who is holding that intention?
I am.
Right.
To me, yeah.
So probably in terms of of what you said is true in a sense of it's useful because you know for yourself that if you're more in stories, you're actually less present with the person, but there might be a double bind in it as well of when is it not used, when there's potentially a bit of an aversion towards having a narrative or towards that there is a narrative.
Oh yes, yeah, there is an aversion to having a narrative. Yeah, the wanting to come out of the story. I think I see what you mean. Yeah, I'm already creating a situation. Yeah.
And what would it be?
To really just to see it, to just watch it all in that sense, including the thing that wants to come out of the story, the thought or whatever that is, the quality of that, the thought or the feeling or whatever happens internally, and noticing the quality of that and becoming also objective to that one. So it's beautiful, the awareness around the stories, and then we can go meta on that and also start to notice the relationship with those stories as well.
The fear of the narrative, hey, to truly free. And this, what you're speaking to, we've all experienced in one form or another. So the fear of the narrative and that narrative's happening again. And so what Sarah's speaking to there is how to truly, truly release yourself into freedom in that sense.
Which is to sit back and observe, to witness it all happening with non-attachment.
What if you weren't moving away from the narrative or moving towards the narrative?
It's just happening.
Yeah, just happening.
How does that space feel for you instead?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. I'll leave it there because there's been many more interesting shares. Thank you.
One last share from someone that feels moved to share. Questions? Alrighty, then we can move on. If anything comes up in the in the upcoming hour or so, or after that, feel free to unmute and just speak up. It's we're in an interactive course here. The more you speak up, the more you get out of it in that sense. So Dan, can you bring up the slides? Thank you. So this week, week 4, the foundations of the Enneagram, and really creating awareness around the typology and the different typologies that there are. So we're going to dive into the quality of the ego construct. So last week we've done stages of adult development, and now it's kind of like a way that we become aware of those stories and those narratives in mind. We spoke about that in the ego construct and how those stories are created. And the Enneagram is a powerful tool to notice the specific flavors that the construct can take. So it's really a map to what you are not. We're showing you what you are not, because you are not the thinker, and therefore you're not your personality type. So that's what we're going to talk about this session. So here it says in this quote, the Enneagram is not a system of personality, as it is so often presented, but rather a definition of character, fixations, and compulsions. And therefore the Enneagram doesn't put you in a box, it shows you the box that you're already in and how to get out of it. And that's really how we speak to the Enneagram as well. We speak to it as a system that shows you what you are not. So anything that we're going to speak to today are certain traits or certain aspects of particular types or points in the Enneagram. And it's all 9 types live within the ego construct, within each ego construct, but it's not who you are. In order to find out who you are not, you need to know what you're not in that sense. So it shows us a way back to truth. And the reason that we also show this model is for you to understand certain patterns and behaviors in the construct in your location, so in yourself better, and also in other people. And therefore have more compassion for certain things you can notice in the thinking in yourself, and have more compassion also for others. And with any map that we show you, including the stages of development that we did last week, and now the Enneagram, it's a map. And the map is not a territory. So it's not reality out there, similar to Google Maps. Google Maps is not actual reality out there. Google Maps is a map that we can use as a tool, but it's not. It is not what reality actually is. So it's important to keep that just in awareness as we go through this model. So what is the Enneagram? The Enneagram gets behind the fences and rationales to the truth and to the truth of what we truly are. So really, the Enneagram is a like I said, is a flavor of the type of the ego construct, and the ego construct gets created in the first 3 to 7 years of our lives. In the first 3 to 7 years of our lives, the ego is kind of built as a house, and then the flavor of the Enneagram comes through that. So you can recognize certain patterns, and the reason that we can't type on behavior is because of this. It's really in the core of your basic fear, your basic desires, your basic motivations that not always come out in particular behavior. It's really what is the intention and what drives those behaviors that we can see outside, but what is it internally driving that makes you do certain things in the world? Anyone else have something to add there? Dan, Marion?
So just a couple of points on the structure of the Enneagram as a model. So the Enneagram is a dynamic personality model. So it's looking at how personalities can shift and change. So within any of the types, and some of you might have read this in the profile that you received, there is an overview of levels of health from unhealthy to average to healthy, with different descriptors of the types through those levels of health. And this just gives us an idea of what the core personality traits of that type might look like, expressed under different levels of stress or growth. So that's one way to use the Enneagram as a map, like Sarah was saying. And another way is to look at growth and stress integration, which we're going to do a little bit more of next week, looking at how the types can move and shift under stress or under growth. So just to point to how the Enneagram is different from other personality profiling types, it gives us that dynamic capacity to use it as a map in relation to the traits.
And a final bit of input here, it is based on a beautiful blend of ancient Sufi wisdom and modern psychology, and just to hold in mind the entire time that as a healthy, integrated human being, we contain all 9 types within us already, right? But as Sarah said, from 3 years onwards and the first 8 years predominantly, they have really shaped these predominant patterns. And what we want to do is gain flexibility, because as you'll see, the healthy traits of all 9 types are useful for all human beings, depending on what the situation in front of them is, as a helper, achiever, a peacemaker, a challenger, whatever it might be. They're all useful. So for us to have ease of access across those. Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah, cool, thanks. So really for every type, it's why the ego is there in the first place is because when we're being born, we basically come out of a safe environment. We're in the belly of the mother and we're safe. The moment we get born and we come into this physical world, that is the biggest trauma that we all go through. That being born in and of itself is the biggest trauma. And we all get the message there, every human being gets the message there that we're not longer being held. We're not longer fully safe, and we're not longer being like held by the environment, held by the universe. So there is a structure that comes online, and the structure is the Enneagram, or is a predominant Enneagram and a flavor of some of the other types as well. And that structure is as a coping mechanism, to deal with the environment, to deal with whatever is going on in the child's environment, and to be able to handle those situations. And it's really for seemingly survival in that sense, to survive as a human being in the world. So that's the structure that's created. It's really in the core of human nature in that sense. With the test, some of you've done the test, some of you haven't done the test. That's all right, then you can leave it there. It's not the be all and end all. So really, as we go through, we're going to walk through these types now. What patterns can you recognize within yourself as we walk through these different types? And there might be some different patterns in different types that you can recognize in yourself. It's really for you to do the work and to explore what resonates with me, or what, like, often the type that is most close to us, it's like, that's just me. Like, I just hear it. It's just, that's me, as in the ego construct, right? It's not actually you, but that you can hear it and it resonates. Or there's actually like, oh, that's not, no, that's not me. I actually don't want to be like that. So there can be a bit of an aversion as well there. But just notice what are some, and just with truthfulness with yourself, what are some things you can notice there? So here we go to type 1. We start with type 1 here first. The unconscious childhood message for the type 1 is it's not okay to make mistakes. So that's why the type 1 starts to reform itself and other people out there. And it does that through perfection. So it wants to perfect and improve the world in some way, reform the world in some way. And therefore the fixation is around judgment. So judges other people and also itself, the construct judges itself in order to perfect itself, because it's not okay to make mistakes. Type 1s are often rational, self-controlled, purposeful, and perfectionistic. That's how you can often recognize a 1. The passion is around resentment. So the resent part, they in some way, reality is not perfect already. So they resent parts of reality. The virtue of the 1 is serenity and acceptance. So if you see type 1 in the world, and a healthy type 1 is just completely accepting. It's the most accepting person that you'll meet in that sense, because everything is perfect in reality and it's perfectly good the way it is. So that's the true essence of the type 1 is perfection. And you can potentially like notice it in yourself as well. Is that something you can see in yourself, some of these traits? The type 2, the helper. The unconscious childhood message here is it's not okay to have my own needs. It's not okay to have my own needs, so I need to look out for other people's needs. That's more important. And the type 2 does that through flattery. So it starts to really look at other people and engage with other people in that way, and starts to give a lot of attention to other people, of like, oh, you did that so well, or you did that so well. And it's through flattery that the type 2 looks at other people and to help other people. The passion here is pride. It's actually on behalf of pride, because somewhere the type 2 feels like other people need more help than I do. So there's a pride element in there. So therefore the virtue for the type 2 is humility, and to really drop into, I have actually also needs, and my own needs need to be met as well. And that's why that's the virtue. And then the true essence of the type 2 is freedom and will to be oneself, will to be true in their own needs, and freedom to be who they are and what they are. Type 1s are often caring, generous, sometimes people-pleasing. They can be possessive and demonstrative. So they can be quite, you can recognize it in there. And the message, the superego message for the type 2 is the need to be needed, the need to be loved by others. Then the type 3, the unconscious childhood message here, it's not okay to have my own feelings and identity. So the type 3 is fixation, is self-admiration and vanity. So it's the type 3 creates a identity because it's not okay who I actually am already. So I'm creating this sort of how do you call it? Like this not really true identity, this fake face almost. That's why the passion is tricking, deception. So it can trick other people really well, and itself really well, to create an identity that suits the situation. And type 3 are really, really good at that. So they can really be adaptive to the situation, read the situation in a well way, and they can be they're image conscious, and they can create the image that is needed in the situation, and they're really, really good at it. So yeah, that's how you can recognize a type 3. They're success driven, they're forward driven. They can be chasing after success in that sense. So that's how you can recognize. They're doing over being. So it's all about doing rather than being. The virtue, therefore, for the type 3 is truthfulness and authenticity. And it's really, how can I just be myself? And just being myself is enough. I don't need to improve myself or to perform in a particular way. To just be myself and being truly authentic. That's the virtue for the type 3. The true essence is harmony and hope. So the type 3 looks for balance in a way, and the harmony that it gets through that authenticity and the hope that it can give to humanity and society as a large is beautiful for the type 3 there. It can really serve as a role model in society. They're great role models in that sense. Then type 4, the individualist. So here the unconscious childhood message, it's not okay to be functional and happy. It sounds a bit weird, but for the type 4, it's they love misery in a way, because it connects them to their origin, is what is their perspective, right? So the misery and the fantasizing, they do this through fantasizing, connects them to themselves in a way. So the passion there is envy, and something is missing. That's the sense there. There's just something missing here. And they look for origin often through creativity. So they can be quite dramatic, aesthetic, intuitive, and expressive people. And they can be also quite self-absorbed and self-indulgent in that sense. But really what it's on behalf of is to be true to yourself, to be true to myself. So they want to stand out from the crowd often and be different in a way. The virtue for the type 2 is calmness and equanimity and emotional balance. It's so when all this, the type 2 can really identify with their emotions. So really when those emotions are all in balance and it's all quite harmonious and calm, that's really where the virtue is for the type 4. And the true essence here is origin. So the type 4 has this beautiful capacity, often through creativity, to connect with, to realign us all through music, through art, with origin of the universe, of what is actually true in reality. Type 5, the investigator. So type 5 got the message at a young age, it's not okay to be comfortable in the world. So the type 5 is all about knowledge. And the fixation here is stinginess and greed. So it can actually, type 5 can be quite materialistically absorbed in that sense, and is all around I need to be comfortable in some way. And the type 5 can really have that, like I said, a fixation with knowledge. So they need to be perceived as knowledgeable. That's really important to them, that they're the specialist, that they're mastering something, that they're really good at something, and through knowledge. So they will often share a lot of knowledge with you. They will share what they've learned. They will share what they know. The passion here is grabbing and lack of resources. So it's on behalf of this idea that there's not enough resources. The virtue here is non-attachment or detachment, and it's to be okay with whatever happens. There's no attachment to needing to know it, or there's no grabbing, there's no greediness. And that's the virtue for the type 5. The true essence for the type 5 is transparency and omniscience. So it's really basic trust in the moment, that I've got all the knowledge in the world or in the universe somewhere behind me, and I don't need it to read it from a book or to get it from somewhere. And I'm just purely in that wisdom. So that's really the true essence for the type 5 there. Type 6, it's not the unconscious childhood message for type 6. It's not okay to trust myself. So somewhere the type 6 has learned that it's not okay, and they can't really fully trust themselves. So they will look out in the environment for support and help from others. The fixation for the type 6 is worrying and what it says, coward, being a bit of a coward. They're quite fearful and anxious of their environment because of that basic trust is disconnected in some way. The type 6 is engaging, responsible, defensive, can be anxious and skeptic, especially at the beginning. If they just get to know you, they can be quite skeptic. But once they know you, they're the most loyal type. They're really, really loyal to the people that they know well, and they will stick with you to the end in that sense. The virtue for the type 6 is courage. So as the 6 starts to lean into courage, that's really where they start to trust their own strength and have faith in themselves. So yeah, that's where the type 6 really flourishes. Type 7, the enthusiast. The childhood message here, it's not okay to bend on anyone or anything. So the structure for the 7 gets created around, I'm not going to be dependent on anyone and anything. I'm going to do this myself. So the fixation here is around planning and anticipation. So they want to be ahead of time. They want to be ahead of everything. So it's very forward driven, a lot of future orientation for the type 7. And type 7 can be impulsive, scattered, very spontaneous and upbeat. And they can accomplish a lot, especially when they're in their healthy ranges. Type 7 is also the type that is most prone to addictions, whether that's food or alcohol or sex or anything really. Type 7 is closest to getting addictions in that sense. That's why it says the passion is overconsumption, can overconsume in particular areas. That's why the virtue is sobriety. So as the type 7 starts to lean into just nuancing, not needing everything at the same time, and sobriety and work, like really starting to work and be can accomplish a lot of things. Type 7 can accomplish a lot of things, especially when they're healthy. So wisdom and work is also their true essence. They really they're really intelligent type. Type 7 are really, really intelligent. So they're really fast and quick, and they can work really well and share a lot of wisdom, especially if they're in their true essence. Type 8, the unconscious childhood message here, it's not okay to be vulnerable and to trust others. And the type 8 does that through revenge. So they're looking out in the world, how can I make revenge in some way? How can I'm not fully, like, I don't feel like I can trust other people fully. So I'm looking for revenge, and objectification is also for the type 8. So they can see things very, and themselves, their own body, for example, very objectively. So the type 8 can sometimes really not look after their own health, for example. And that's where all of a sudden a stroke comes or whatever, because they're just not in touch with their body in that sense, because they've objectified it. The passion for the type 8 is lust and forcefulness. So the type 8 are really self-confident, they're confrontational, they're very direct, they're willful, they can be quite pushy, but they're very decisive as well. They're very direct people, they're great leaders, you see them often lead teams or businesses. They love hard work. They're strong and controlled, and they want to not be controlled by the environment because they want to have the control themselves. And they can fight for it. So type 8 is also expressive anger. They can express their anger if they need to. In the true essence, though, the type 8 goes to truth, and it's really, they will share the truth, and the truth will be heard by others. And that's really the type 8 in its true essence, which is super beautiful there as well. And a softening comes online there for the type 8. Type 9, last type, is the unconscious childhood message here. It's not okay to assert myself, to in some way stand up for myself. So here the fixation is around a bit of laziness can sometimes come online, daydreaming, and just like sitting in the back a little bit and watching everything play out in front of themselves. They don't want to interrupt others. They want others to be okay. So they don't want to disturb the peace. That's why it's called the peacemaker, right? They don't want to have if everything out there is peaceful, I'm going to be peaceful in here. So that's, they want peace of mind, and they do that through not creating any conflict outside in the world. So the passion here is they can be quite sloth, and they can be disengaging. So they will go into their own little hole, and they won't engage with you anymore. On behalf of connection, they actually want connection, but because they want connection, they actually disconnect, which is a really sort of interesting pattern, but that's how they do that. Type 9s are easygoing, agreeable, receptive, and reassuring. The virtue for the type 9 is action. So then they really can take powerful action in the world with still that gentleness and that softness that the type 9 naturally has. The true essence of the type 9 is love. They're really bringing people and societies together into unconditional love. And when you're with a type 9, you feel that like they're super soft and loving and genuine. And really, with all this true essence, as you see for type 9, it's love and perfection, will and freedom, harmony and hope, origin. For all those types, they live within all of us, right? So as we can access all of these qualities already within the ego construct, ultimately there's flexibility through all of these types. So we can, depending on a particular context or situation, just move along these numbers here and access different traits and things as to what we need. And we can also potentially recognize some fixations or some passions where are we getting stuck. And it's really to see all of it and become aware of it, to then know what you're not, so know who you are not, to then also move into more flexibility first, and to ultimately clear that from yourself, to clear that from the construct, and just be really free and flowy in the world through what we've shared here. Marian or Dan, anything to share there?
Nope.
Nope, beautiful. Let's jump into this slide here then. So thank you, Sarah, for that overview of the 9 types in the Enneagram. This slide here, we're going to talk a little bit about basic fear and basic desires of each type. Now, we're not going to go around and I'll let you read and maybe write down or take note of the basic fear and basic desire of the type that you have been exploring off the back of the tests that you did this week. If you haven't done the test yet, but you have a bit of a sense of, oh, that one as Sarah was going around the 9 really landed, or it sounded like that plays out a lot for you, then have a go with applying that one. So what we want to do is just capture down the basic fear and the basic desire. And I'll talk very briefly about how they work. So essentially, each type has that basic fear, which is built on the back of the unconscious childhood messages that Sarah was taking us through. And the basic fear is what the type really wants to move away from, what they want to avoid. And it then, in kind of compensation of that, we have the basic desire of what the type wants to move towards. So let's give an example of that. For example, in the type 6, the loyalist, if the base fear is of being without support and guidance, a question then that we can ask is, well, if you're identifying or noticing a 6 typology playing out for you, where is it that you tend to seek support and guidance? And so we turn the basic fear into an inquiry question. Is seeking that support and guidance coming up in terms of looking for routine and control over what you do in your day? You're seeking structures to support and reinforce. Do you ask others for their opinion instead of trusting your own? Or look to other people to make decisions, avoiding taking responsibility, to avoid the fear of being unguided by another? So that's an example of how the basic fear, we can start to use it as an inquiry process. And this is something that we'll take into a breakout room in just a short time. So an example with the type 2, if the base fear is around being worthless, then we can start to notice, where is it that you try to overly help people in order for yourself to feel more worthwhile in that role? Is there a tendency to look outside to others and what you're doing for others in order to receive and feel love? Is it through the flattery in the comments, as Sarah was sharing? And where is it that you're potentially not attending to your own needs? So they're just a couple of examples of how the fear can operate in relation to the desire. Are there any questions on any of the types that you'd like us to explore before we move on? Or anything to add, Sarah and Dan?
Just simply that the basic fear, whilst that's at the very core of a lot of our patterns and actions and why we do things in our day-to-day, they actually take various different forms, as you were just explaining in that sense. So you don't have to necessarily be feeling like, but I go through my day not fearing anything. Yeah, but how might this be coming through in even the smallest of behaviors, how you choose to spend your time, your energy, your days, the work you've chosen, the way you are in social settings or the way you aren't in social settings, and so on and so on.
As long as there's any form of fear or desire playing out, it's really just an heteronomy. And what I mean by that is there's a force upon you and you can't actually be fully free in the world. So there's a force upon you through this basic fear or this desire, which is double, like it's the same scale, right? Duality, one end of the duality, both of them. And as long as that's playing out, there is not true freedom in that sense, because there's just any form of something outside of you is influencing you in a particular way in how you feel and how you're going and how you're being in the world. So what is the noticing here? The opportunity here is to see how this is playing out, and to also, because you can objectify, become disidentified in a sense, disidentify with that in a way, become objective to it, and then release yourself from that in a sense. It's really, as long as it's playing out, there's suffering playing out. So it's really good to know that. Potentially, maybe not.
Okay.
So explore go for it, Mary.
So yeah, on back of that, exploring our triggers. Our triggers have something to teach us. And what this slide is showing is the triangle in the middle is representing the shell of the constructing that happens, or of the ego construct. So you can see down the bottom part of the triangle, we've got a thicker expression. So where the ego construct might be quite reinforced. It's really good at it. The storytelling is very strong. And so you can see on the left-hand side, the basic fear is on, in this modeling, it's on the sort of internal part of the construct. So hidden deep on the inside. We don't often like to go into that basic fear. But because that basic fear exists, as Sarah was saying, it is a duality. So we need to, the construct itself results in, or the fear in the construct, results in a compensating self-concept, which brings relief to the construct from that fear.
Marion,
so
what's a trigger?
So a trigger, yeah, thank you, Dan, is when we're experiencing a reactive state in the face of an external situation. So in our very first week, we were talking about the ego constructing and how there's an external situation, but because of the meaning making that we're making, we might be experiencing a reactive state. So a trigger can be small or it could be large. Essentially, it's when we're experiencing an emotional response based on the meaning that we've made, that's not necessarily true to the external situation, but feels very true to the individual.
Yeah, it's very personalized, a trigger. So it's very the identity is in some way confronted, in a sense. It's some way confronted, and that's so. As you see, the compensating self concept is a coping mechanism to not have to feel that basic fear. So it's a way of being in a world to not have to feel that. So it's covering it up, in a sense, if you want to call it like that.
And so we can recognize a triggered state, usually because our state itself will change through heat or temperature. And, we can often identify that first of all in the body, which we've explored in previous sessions a little, that contracted state. So the compensating self-image or self-concept that's created is in the face of the basic fear in the typology. This is the narrative I need to tell to offset it. We've spoken about how the ego construct is the storyteller. So the compensating self-concept is the story that is created in reaction to the fear. And it's potentially a more useful story. It might lead to more productive relationships or ways of interacting with the world. It's important to know that it is just a different version of the same thing. It is just a story, as well as the fear itself is just a story. And as Sarah was saying, by bringing awareness to either the fear or the story itself, bringing watchfulness to it, that's what allows us the objectivity in the space to no longer identify that those stories are true about us, if that makes sense. And so an example here, if we pick the one at the bottom in the type 8, the basic fear is around being harmed or controlled by others. And so in the face of that, the story that the 8 will construct is, well, I'm strong, I'm assertive, and I'm in control.
It's really beautiful as you start to explore this in yourself. You start to notice some of your coping strategies, right? In the face of particular situations, in the face of particular people, some of your coping strategies. Hey, where do you notice that you become stronger or seemingly stronger than what you normally actually are? Or let's say type 8 resonates with you, or you become more clever, or you pretend to be clever like a type 5, you pretend to know it all. It's a strategy to not have to feel the fear. So where can you see that in yourself and also in other people? Hey, like as you relate with other people, it's like, oh, I see this person is getting all of a sudden quite assertive and strong. And just knowing that it's actually on behalf of a fear can also bring a level of compassion to that. So we're really pointing this out to bring compassion to the construct in your location, so in yourself and also in other people, right? So to see those things playing out and to bring a level of softness and compassion that you can see why it's there, and to understand also other people's behaviors. And there's always a positive intention, no matter what it looks like from the outside. There's always a positive intention from the inside for people. So really, like, seeing that through these behaviors, the Enneagram is just a beautiful tool to understand the construct here better, but also other people, and to really see that playing out for them and for yourself. Any questions on that? Because you're going to go into a breakout room and you're going to explore some of this. So if something is not clear, there's a good opportunity to ask a question.
Sorry, Marion, I think you said before that when you are looking at it like from the basic fear, and then you said around turning it into a question. Mm-hmm. What was the question that you kind of exemplified?
Yeah, so for example, for the 6, if the base fear is I'm fearful of being without support, flipping it around and going, well, where is it that I seek support?
Okay.
In what ways do I try to and essentially it's what's the basic desire. is the flip side of it. So the basic desire then is to have support and guidance. So to use this as an exploration tool, it would be, where is it that I seek support and guidance?
Yeah, or value or
yeah.
love. Or,
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Or
Thanks,
like, for
Marion.
example, in the one, where is it that I feel like I have to be good?
Yes.
With the type 3, it might be, where is it that I currently seek my value?
Fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah. And so this is pointing to like the power in the Enneagram is using it as a torch and as a map on the patterns of behaviors that might be just like, we kind of know that they kind of keep happening, but we might have this sense of, why do I keep doing this? It's a really beautiful way to just explore that in depth for ourselves.
And gain flexibility in being able to access the usefulness of types in that sense. So really boxing you out. It is the most comprehensive, by far, personality profiling test out there that has been around for such a long time. And it's a big reason as to why we do use it, rather than just like, hey, this is your type. And it's quite a rigid approach versus, hey, all 9 you have access to. And so how do we move into that flexibility?
Yeah. So we're going to go into a breakout room with 2 people in each breakout room, Lawrence. And what we're going to explore in this breakout room is, in what ways do you see the basic fear and the basic desire play out in your life specifically? So what are some of the ways that you see this playing out? Share 2 or 3 examples that are coming up for you. What can you notice in yourself, hey? That's point 1. And point 2, how do you use your compensating self-concept to keep your feelings from being affected? So that was that last slide that Marion mentioned. How do you use that? Can we go back to the last slide for a sec then? So how do you use the text there on the right hand side? How do you use that from your feelings not being affected? How you use for the type 7, I'm happy, spontaneous and fulfilled. How you use that as a narrative to not feel that fear.
How does that play out for you in your life?
How does that play out specifically in your life?
Where do you tend to bring in happiness and spontaneity and tell yourself that you're fulfilled to avoid feeling being deprived or trapped or in pain?
Or any of the other types. So go into breakout rooms and explore this for yourself. And after the breakout room, we have a bit of an open floor.
Beautiful, juicy conversation that we all get to dive into and get messy with our personality types.
Yes. Woo! Enjoy. Alrighty, welcome back, everyone. So, what came up in that breakout room? Anyone that would like to share?
Jacek, you'll need to unmute if you're...
What I have just said is I won't say anything at this stage because I took too much time talking, and the other 2 ladies didn't have much time to express themselves. I didn't realize the time was so short, and yeah, we very quickly have seen the time ticking down, and yeah, so I apologize for this. But I have mentioned that I like this bit, this explanation of these graphs and these different personalities. It's a lot of truth in it. It's a lot of these triggers, different triggers in life. Yeah, so I was quite surprised that this is so structured, so well known, how it can be, what can trigger us and everything, all these graphs. Except I will for me it will be difficult to classify myself to one of the groups. I think I'm a little bit of everything. I'm a little bit of individualist, little bit of creator, a little bit of basically when I have looked at the each of the group, I could find things I'm doing on daily basis or maybe not regularly, but different stages of my life. I'm trying to do this. So I was, this is great what I have seen, and thank you for that. Yeah, this trigger different way of triggering people, a different situation. I believe that was very good explained, and sometimes people imagine and they believe this is true, and sometimes sometimes it's intentional. This is two different ways of triggers. If it's intentional and or if it's something that we imagine and we believe this is true. So I will split in these two different groups at the beginning, I believe. Yeah. So trigger might be intentional because someone wants to is expecting some reaction from us, or could be just a normal situation in life, and we believe that was a particular happening, and we believe this is towards us. But
it's a really useful reflection as to how things might seem on the surface level, in terms of, sometimes it seems really intentional and sometimes it seems not so intentional. The thing that unifies both of them is that it's always on behalf of fear. Even the one that seems like it's intentional, there is some fear of something behind there that has caused that to come through, and that person just may not have the skills to be able to express that in a more useful or healthy or even loving way in that sense. But it's both intentional or not intentional would be based on fear, which is really useful for us then to remember and hold that in mind as well.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
What else has been coming up around the personality, your personality construct, questions you've had, reflections in what was discussed?
I was explaining a tiny example that happened in real time to my group with Ness and Michelle, and Nathaniel's also listening in, and we're talking about each other's Enneagrams today. And as Sarah was explaining his one, he messaged me saying, I see, it was on a slightly more, just one little more unhealthy thing that might have been playing out. And he's like, I see how that is happening. And instantly my response was I said, there's all these beautiful virtues though that Sarah had explained, when you're at your healthiest, I see those and I think they're really beautiful. And that felt just like how it was. Like that was just my honest response. But in reflection, there's a tiny fear underlying there that was that if I didn't flatter, that would hinder the relationship somehow, potentially. And it was so interesting to just notice how that situation played out, because it was so minuscule, so tiny. And it just felt like that's just how it is. Like this is just how I would respond. There's no other way to do so. That would be as genuinely me, but maybe more as genuine to the construct, to keep that fear story in play.
For sure. Beautiful observation.
Can we hear the two with the flatter speaking to the seven? So starting to notice and pick these up so that you can notice and pick these up in yourself and others as well, and understand that a little bit.
And Kate, what you mentioned there as well, it almost feels normal, right? Just like that. Yeah, that's the response. That's a normal response, and that's how the personality plays out. It really is. It's so subtle and often so unconscious. It can feel like, this is just the way that the response would be. There would be normal response. Well, and then to really notice, and that's where the genuine comes in, right? Like, so truth will not necessarily set you free, but truthfulness will. It's a quote from Ken Wilber, actually. So like, how truthful can you be with yourself in what you're seeing? This goes for everyone. Be with yourself with what you're seeing, and how truthful can you look into that, and that will set you free. So you can read all the books about Buddhism and whatever else, but it's really about truthfulness with oneself, and that's the where the freedom comes from. So yeah, thank you for sharing, Kate. Beautiful sort of noticing. Another share, what came up? Paula, I saw you laughing halfway through. What came up for you?
It's very, very true. So I'm a type 6. So the seeking of support and guidance, which I do a lot. And what I tend to do to try and remove that is either not make decisions and push the decisions onto other people, ask people for their opinion, or plan everything so that everything's structured to the minuscule detail, so that nothing can go wrong and everything will be okay, because that's that gives me my sense of security and safety, which of course doesn't leave much room for flexibility.
Yeah, beautiful. Saw you laughing when Mary was speaking to the 6 there. So yeah, and just to know that it's not you, huh? It's the construct, and it's a habit. And the more you can see it, the more you can clear yourself from it. You're in coaching with Lauren, so really like exploring that fear. Hey, the more you can explore the fear, the less it will have power over you, and the shapes that takes, the colors that takes in, your day-to-day interactions in life and decisions and so on. And the more you can really the more you can shine a light on the things that you may not have seen before, the less it will have power over you, because it's there and you can see it, and it doesn't have any influence over you anymore. So yeah, beautiful that was sort of supportive for you in that sense.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing.
The cave that each of you, which will be a different cave, fear to enter is the cave that holds the treasure. Nowhere else. And so picking up that torch and leaning into that. And so as we're exploring these basic fears and basic desires and wants and how they play out in your day-to-day, to really try this on and go out exploring so that it's as useful for you as possible and you get the most out of it. What specific scenarios or contexts, or in interaction with which specific people, do particular patterns of this type tend to play out? Can you go into your next 7 days and become, okay, I'm just going to watch how this plays out in these 2-3 contexts, and set that intention for yourself and maybe write that down. And well, if it didn't play out in that way, what would actually be more freeing and more true? Yeah, what would a more free and true way be? And then practice that. Now, guess what? The first time you practice doing or interacting in a different way other than what that typology does will feel odd and uncomfortable. But that's that cave, yeah? Because you're facing that fear by leaning into a way that is more true in that moment. And
it's going to be unfamiliar, unknown. The familiarity lies within what is familiar with the particular patterns within that way of being, a constructing that feels familiar, and maybe it has worked for you so far, or maybe it hasn't, depending on how you view that. And whether it has or it hasn't, it's still storied. So start to notice the stories that you're telling yourself in moment to moment living. The moment there's a story, there's a feeling of a lack or of a fear. The moment there's a story, and it sounds a bit, depressing, but that's just true. So it's really just notice all the stories, notice what you're telling yourself during the day, and how is it supportive, or how is it, what is it trying to tell yourself to not feel that emptiness, which is actually what you are.
And here's the thing, it did serve you. All of these patterns have served you at some point in time, and most likely very, very early on in your lifetime. in response to specific situations, as Sarah was saying, when we came into this world and we were born and in this environment, didn't feel so safe, and all of a sudden we started to develop these structures to have us feel safe, have us not feel hurt, have us not experience fear. So they did all serve us. The only issue is that we tend to continue to carry these patterns into a life and day-to-day interactions that do not contain or resemble our life when we were growing up at all. But we still use the same patterns, the same emotional patterns. Yeah. And so
That's probably when we're a child. So it's a child. It's a child.
the love and compassion, because they did serve you once. Love and compassion for the pattern. However, is everyone still wearing the undies that they were wearing when they were 3 years old? Underwear. Anyone still wearing? Lee's nodding. Yeah.
Nice.
Yes.
And for those that are not, so minus the 2, why not? Because we've outgrown them. Yeah. So give yourself permission to outgrow and put these beautiful bits of emotional underwear that keep us safe. That's a bad analogy. It's turning into a bad analogy, into the bin. Mike's not liking it too much. But, allow yourself to part ways. Yeah. And then experience the freedom. Yeah. You already have this. And it just requires a little bit of faith and trust in the fact that regardless of how big a leap you take, you've got this.
You already are fully held by the universe. Fully and completely being held. You don't need to do anything for that. So you don't need to construct a sense of self in the world to know that you're safe.
Easier said than done. And how do you do it? Well, you just go for it. And there's nothing we could possibly say that will make it easier necessarily, apart from letting you know that it's going to be uncomfortable and that freedom lies on the other side. Try it on for yourself, and that you have not only us, but an entire community here on this call, here to support you along the way. Yeah, so you can do it, go alone, or you have a whole heap of support available to you here.
Yeah, it's gonna be uncomfortable. If you're truly exploring this, it's gonna be uncomfortable. Just be prepared for it and know that that's the work. It's the nature of this work.
So what's
Lee, you put your hand up.
Cool.
I can really feel the tension in my body after the thinking about the uncertainty and just going for it. It's like that.
Hmm.
We're lucky that today we are exploring letting go of tension. How amazing. Awesome, Paula. And Lee?
Yeah. So I wanted to ask, so when you and I first did my Enneagram a while ago, I think I was a 3. And so doing this yesterday, I got an 8. So I just wanted to, can you speak to that and just sort of, they're quite different. I just want to get a little bit of clarity. It definitely resonates with me, but again, I can see how I'm not as rigid as I used to be. But yeah, are you happy to discuss that a little bit?
Yeah, quite different, but also quite similar in terms of there's a lot of forward motion by both the 3 and the 8 in that sense, in their directiveness. With the typologies, they can often reflect a phase of life that we're going through in that sense, and where we're currently at as well, and a particular mindset that's been held at this point in time, which can happen as well. So what I would suggest doing is have a listen to the 3 and have a listen to the 8, and know that maybe there's an expanded level of flexibility that's being gained where there's greater access to the 3 and the 8. And it'd be interesting to have a look at have a look at the points that actually, or how many, what did you score with the 3 versus the 8?
I think it was like in a manner of like 1 point, like, and then the next
Sure.
one was another couple of points. So it seemed very close. And yeah, just listening to the healthy and the unhealthy, and like I could see how they are related. Well, it was just really interesting. And is this sort of an expectation that you'd have with doing this work, that you would start shifting into perhaps different scores? Is that common?
It is. So Lee, with that, it's just like often is one type is really the core of the ego construct. So as the construct creates itself at the age between 3 and 7, there's one type that should be closest to the construct. So that should be like, that is cross-contextually throughout life, it should stay the same in that sense. If you want it, like, you can gain flexibility and like access all 9 types at some point, and that is all available, but there's one type, so whether that's the 3 or the 8 for you, that is really closer to the construct, that will resonate more in that sense. And it's for you to, that's why I said that the test is not the be all and end all. It really depends what kind of mood you're in, what kind of phase of life that you're in, and you're answering questions in a different way, depending on some work that you've done with Dan, like there's all these different variables. So it's really for you to do the exploration within yourself. What is just at the core of this particular behavior that as well type 8 as 3 do in the world, like achieving and a little bit more towards motivated. But what is at the core of that? Is it based on needing to be seen as valuable or as important, as significant, or is it needing to be strong and not be controlled by the environment in some way? There's just a very different intention behind that. So the core type should stay the same throughout life. If you want to call it like that, at some point you'll be free from it, if you do enough of this kind of work in that sense. And then there are certain flavors that come in, but that's really what should stay the same in that sense. It doesn't necessarily change. And there's room for flexibility. We're also going to explore different wings and different flavors even to the type. So there's all these different nuances to it. Like the Enneagram has there's so much nuance to all the types. So really, this is really the surface level that we're really touching the tip of the iceberg in that sense, in terms of what's out there on the Enneagram. So if you really want to dive deeper into that, we will put some extra resources also in Kajabi. You can read a bit more about it, because it's just, to really understand it in depth, there's some background reading also probably required to really understand and to really see playing out what is actually happening for me here. What is this truly on behalf of, on the deepest level in that sense?
Well, I just got an email earlier today from the coaching room to enroll in their next Enneagram course. So,
oh yeah, they're doing that too.
Well, yeah.
Useful course. It's I've done it too. It's pretty useful. It's pretty cool.
And so, as a reminder, next week, this is why we've dedicated 2 weeks to the Enneagram. It's so comprehensive, and we're still only going to be scratching the tip of the iceberg. And so next week we'll be speaking to the movement of the types from one type to the other, how that happens, when that happens, in moments of stress, in moments of fatigue, and which one of those resonate for you. Between now and that session, so in 7 days' time, have a look at the ones that you scored most high on. Have a listen to the 30-minute audio, and like Sarah said, there's two responses that you might have. Yes, that sounds like me. That's mostly me most of the time. It's not going to be completely the same, but mostly me most of the time. Or there might be a really strong no. That's just not me. Okay, and that's a good sign that it's highly likely that it could be, because for you to have scored that high with that many points, and then the stronger version comes up, there's something around that typology that might not be like necessarily, but they're both good signs that it's highly likely that that's your predominant type.
Yeah,
We
just
do.
just one point that I wanted to make. When Paula did, you did a share on, you felt a bit of a tension in the body, right? It's quite a beautiful share to point it out, also for everyone. That is the construct. That is that contraction of, oh, we're hearing this information and the construct is smart. No, we're not gonna do that. We're not gonna go for it. So that's the contraction, and that is the construct playing out. So really good that you caught that for yourself, that you noticed that. That is the things to become aware of, because it's not only, it's in here, right? It's the stories, but it happens in body as well. So that contraction, the feeling that you feel there in the body, that is the construct trying to get the attention, trying to in some way do something with that information. So yeah, just to point that out for you, Paula, and also for everyone on this course, it's quite a useful pointer in that sense. It's you notice it physiological as well. You notice the construct in the body as well as particular tensions and things. So yeah.
Beautiful segue. And so if we can all stand for a moment, but be sure that you can continue to hear me. Yeah, we're going to do some mindful standing, if you've ever done that before. Cool. Everyone standing. Job mic. Alrighty. And as you're standing there, let's first just shake it out a little bit. Start with the arms, the hands, the head, a little bit of a wobble. Let the shoulders roll. Maybe even a light hop up and down on your feet, bouncing up and down, entering and getting into the body. And as you're moving, slowly move slower and ease off with your movement. Slower and slower, closing your eyes, coming inside, internally, into your internal world, until you come to a stop and to a stillness. Hands hanging by your side. Arms hanging by your side. Just noticing your breath as you stand here. Noticing the weight of your body through the soles of your feet, pressing down against the floor. Notice the weight running through your left foot versus the weight running through your right foot. Are they even? Can you see how even you can get them? That's it. Keeping your eyes closed. Allowing your body to be the center of your attention and awareness. And now gently and slowly shifting the weight over to your left foot and being your foot, feeling what your foot is feeling. As the weight increases. And then slowly making your way, slowly, gently, even slower, over to the center. And just feel the shift of weight. How delicately can you notice the shift of weight as you slowly take your weight over to your right foot? Which parts of your right foot are bearing most of the weight? The heel, the balls of the feet, Really gently, slowly, now coming back to the center. And know that you can use an exercise like this not only in standing, but as you're walking to go get your coffee in the morning, to go get the mail out of the letterbox, walking to the fridge. Can you notice the feet pressing down against the floor with every step? Can you notice the weight shifting from the left foot to the right foot to the left foot as you're walking, and bringing yourself out of mind and into body, losing your mind, dropping into your senses. And when you notice that you've lost your mind because you were with your body, notice where you were whilst your mind was lost. Still there, with or without the mind. And so, in your own time, gently taking a seat, getting yourself comfortable again. Beautiful. So today, in this part here, it's going to be a light introduction into self-regulation. You've already been doing it with your breath. The only difference now is that we're going to introduce letting go of tension by bringing awareness to the body. Okay, and now if we weave in this session to this point, you have your fear, basic fear and basic desire. Now, what is the state of fear, as Sarah mentioned just before we shifted over to this? What state does the body go into when you experience fear, or you're driving and thinking, I hate this road, I hate this road, I hate this road? What state does the body go into? One of contraction, right? One of tension. Someone mentioned tension earlier on. Now let's look at the other end. Basic desire, when you're wanting something. You're really, really, really wanting something. Is it any different? Also one of contraction. Yeah. And so what's the anecdote? Sorry, delete that word. What's the antidote to that? Letting go of tension, yeah? And so we're going to use letting go of tension as a tool for self-regulation. And self-regulation just means regulating through different states. Shifting gears, for example. And as a really light introduction to brain waves, okay? Brain waves are what have different frequency of brain waves. Slow speed versus really, really high speed are what have us feel either really, really, really calm and relaxed versus hyper focused or in an emergency mode. There's 4 main brain waves. The fastest of the brain waves is the beta brainwave frequency, beta. This one is emergency mode or hyperfocus. It's the brainwave state where you get stuff done at work. Really, really useful. Only issue with our society is that we spend very little time stepping down and out of that frequency. It's on and on and on and on and on and on. The next one down is alpha, brainwave frequency, a little bit slower. Still a focus, but a light focus. Same focus you would need if you were reading a book. One down again is theta. This is where light relaxation comes in. Meditation. It can go into the ends of deeper meditation. We start to lower our cortisol, stress hormone levels here. And we start to go into rest and recovery, where our body and mind can start to do those things. And then delta, the slowest of the lot, is where the most rest and recovery happens. Deep sleep happens with delta brainwave frequency. And so we're going to be going deeper on brainwaves further down the track. However, the two things we can use to regulate and change intentionally, shift gears between these states when it's useful, is breath. You've been practicing that for 3 weeks. And not only do you just use it in that 5-minute, 10-minute, 15-minute sitting, you can start to bring this out into your day-to-day life and self-regulate in the middle of a conversation where you might be feeling a little bit of fear because of a story that's being held about what that person has just said or what they might be thinking about you. At work, with your boss, whoever it might be. And then the other pillar of our sitting practice, breath being one, the other pillar being letting go of tension. And the reason letting go of tension works to slow down the brain waves is through body awareness. You know, even really simple, what you just did there, if everyone closed their eyes and became aware of their shoulder, left shoulder in space, and aware of potentially just lightly the fabric that they're wearing sitting on their skin. You were not aware of this. It was not within your awareness before. You were not paying attention to it, but now you can feel it. And just bring your awareness there, or, hey, can you feel the air surrounding your hand, your left hand? The temperature, maybe the moistness that you were not paying attention to before. This body awareness immediately slows down the brain waves, and you can, if you allow yourself, you can notice the shift in state that starts to happen. And so, which part of the body do you feel takes on tension first? Unmute yourself, or maybe put in the chat. Everyone write it in, but don't hit enter. We're going to hit enter at the same time. Which part of the body do you feel takes on tension first? Wait for my count of 3 and we'll hit enter in about 10 seconds time. Getting your answers in. Who needs to be right? That could be a type 1 thing. Who needs to look like they're going to get it right? That could be a type 3 thing. Who needs to help someone else to get it right? Type 2. On the count of 3, 2, 1, hit enter. Whoa, so many different answers. Okay, so we had chest, shoulders, traps, shoulders, chest, lungs, jaw, neck, upper body, shoulders, chest, stomach, arms, jaw, my mind, my heart, solar plexus, jaw, chest. All correct in one way or another. But actually no one put it there. Put the answer of the first place in the body that takes up tension. Diaphragm, not the diaphragm. Any last ditch effort? It's the eyes. Okay. And it'll all make sense in about 60 seconds. So when you'll notice that the second that we need to focus, what happens to the eyes? We start to squint, right? And the reason that happens that triggers the reptilian part of our brain, oldest part of our brain, right? A bit of a survival instinct. And it triggers the amygdala, where fear is often in, but it doesn't necessarily have to be directly related to fear, but also simply survival, to focus, to be able to see out into the field as to what needs to be done and what, where are the gaps, that what's not fitting into this environment. And so we start to peer out and we bring intention into our eyes. What's the first thing you do when you sit down for work and you look at the laptop? Right? The tension comes into the eyes as well. And so, can't remember where I read it, but if you can relax the muscles around the eyes, roughly 40% of the tension in your entire body starts to release. And you can feel it as you just soften the muscles around the eyes. And so there's a thing that someone somewhere called the triangle of tension, which runs from point of your forehead down to the base of one shoulder, down to the base of the other shoulder, and across. Most of your answers landed somewhere inside of that triangle. Those are the other areas where we take on tension. Triangle of tension. So you have the eyes, other facial muscles, the jaw, when you're nervous and you're like, oh, in anticipation. Shoulders, just letting go through there. Maybe even a little bit of the chest and muscles through the neck as well. That's where we hold most of our tension. Sure, we can hold tension in our hips and in our gut and the other areas as well. But this here, when you can tell that someone's stressed, they're kind of sitting like this or some version of this. Yeah. The beautiful thing is that we need to start to trust, or we can trust the body with its beautiful intelligence. It's not rocket science, letting go of tension. If you're like, just completely let go now, your entire body, just let it go, relax. People without having had any training in yoga or anything else would tend to be like, roll their shoulders around and roll their neck around. Marion was doing it in the break, hasn't done a yoga teacher training. And so what we're going to do is bring intentional awareness to this area of the body in our sitting. And so in the first few minutes of this sitting, where are we at? In the first few minutes of this sitting, first couple minutes, we'll start with the breath as we have been. And do this in the next 7 days as well, where you sit down in your sitting and just bring your awareness to your breath and allow your breath to slow down. Okay. And then after a moment or two, start to bring awareness and attention to those areas of the body. So let's have a go now. Get yourself comfortable. Nice and comfortable seated there. Closing your eyes. Just firstly becoming aware of your breath. Letting that first breath out be one that comes all the way out. And just allowing for each breath out to be slightly slower than the last breath out. And if you like, bringing in the Ujjayi breath, fogging up that window. And starting with your eyes, relaxing, softening and melting the muscles around your eyes. You'll notice your entire face to drop, to soften. Continue bringing your awareness to the sensation of the face. And then closing your mouth if it's not already, bringing your tongue gently, softly rested on the roof, the top of your mouth, and then softening your jaw, having an open jaw but mouth closed. Tongue on the roof of your mouth as you breathe through the nose. And brushing your awareness over any parts of the face that may be holding a little more tension still. And letting those soften. Forehead, eyes, mouth, and jaw. Then we make our way down our neck, our shoulders, noticing whether there's just that little bit more that we could drop our shoulders. And even once we've dropped those shoulders, is there a little bit more without any forcing? Oh, still a little more room to soften into. Oh, and a little bit more. And a little bit more. Allowing the softness of this triangle, face and shoulders, to be at the forefront of our awareness, the sensation of this softness. And then just scanning, making your way down your arms and your hands. Is there anything being held on to there? Any letting go of tension, softening of a grip of your fingers? Scanning a little further down the torso, the tummy, softening through the abdomen, and softening and opening through the hips. Allowing the rest of the body to stay and remain and suspended in this softness as we make our way down our legs, lower leg, feet and toes. Now hold the softness of an awareness of this entire body within your awareness as one body. We'll make our way up from the toes and the feet, just gently brushing our awareness over our legs. And as we scan over these areas of the body, releasing and checking in, releasing any pockets of tension that are being held, tightness. Just pop, pop, and softening through the hips, buttocks, abdomen, torso, arms, hands, shoulders, neck, jaw, face, eyes, and bringing your awareness to the very, very crown and point of the top of your skull. As you encapsulate this entire body within your awareness. Taking a deeper breath in here. And gently out. Know that the more that you practice this on a daily basis, the more easily it is accessible to you throughout the day, throughout the week, in any moments of tension. And allow your capacity for awareness of body tension to unfold and grow. When you're ready, gently opening your eyes. And so please use that practice daily in your practice along with the breath, but also carry that with you now as a tool, some of that self-regulation. Try it on, give it a go, and see where it works, where it doesn't work so well. Why didn't it? And share that in your pod practice, any challenges you've got there. So the sitting practice for this week, triangle of tension, 5 to 10 minutes a day, letting go of tension. Your SAP practice, self-awareness practice for this week, is noticing moments in the day or week where you are resisting, or wanting. Resisting or wanting. So fearful of or desiring. How do you handle these moments? What do you use to cope? What can you notice in regards to what you use to cope? What can you notice in how your body is trying to cope? Journal 1 a day if you can. Just get it down really quick, 2-minute journal. I captured that one moment. As always, Kajabi resources. Resources are in Kajabi, pod practice, sharing what you are noticing related to your SAP practice and your sitting practice. Coaching calls, some may have happened over the last week and the rest will happen over the next week. And any questions, thank you so much for your energy in Telegram. If you have any questions, shoot them there or send us an email. Thank you, everyone. And yeah, I was going to ask who's coming to our retreat. That is happening on the 7th to the 10th. So if you are interested, please reach out. We will be delving into some of this silence, but also some beautiful sensory experiences, and seeing what comes up when we do detox from the noise. So please get in touch, and thank you again, and we're looking forward to next week.
Thank you so much.
Everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
See you, everybody.